They said I wasn't made for the spotlight. Too soft-spoken. Too unsure. Too invisible. They chose leaders while I was still figuring out how to breathe in a room full of noise. I watched from the sidelines, not because I wanted to, but because I was told that's where I belonged. They made their decision before I ever stood up. Called me support staff. Called me background. They never imagined I'd stand center stage, holding the mic. But here's the part they never saw coming. The keynote wasn't just a speech. It was the day I rewrote the story they tried to finish for me. My name is Avery Morgan. I'm 31 years old. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. And this is how the girl they said would never lead lit up the room. I was supposed to be a lawyer. That was the plan. The good daughter plan. The make the family proud plan. My dad's voice still echoes in my memory. You've got the brains, Avery. Just stay focused. Lead with logic, not emotion. And I tried. I really did. 4 years of undergrad, top of my class. Then law school, where I shrunk smaller each semester. The pressure wasn't the problem. It was the silence. I didn't see myself in any of it. No fire, no calling. Just ticking boxes. I dropped out in my second year. Didn't even make a speech about it. Just packed my bag on a rainy Tuesday and never went back. My family didn't say much. Just enough. She's just taking a break. She'll figure it out. Eventually. My uncle wouldn't even look me in the eye at Thanksgiving. My mom brought out old photo albums like they were clues to a daughter who disappeared. There was no yelling. That would have been easier. Just this heavy quiet, like I'd let the whole bloodline down and no one wanted to say it out loud. I got a job at a local nonprofit, admin work, answering phones, typing meeting minutes for people who barely noticed me. I started again. No applause. No one asked where I'd been. No one cared. And maybe that's why it worked. Because when no one's watching, you can start becoming someone new. The nonprofit was called Common Threads. We focused on helping immigrants adjust to life in Minnesota. My job was simple: scheduling volunteers, translating intake forms, organizing supply closets. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what my family would call a career. But there was something different about that place. People listened. People thanked you. That alone felt like air after years of suffocating. 3 months in, we launched a side project, tech literacy classes for older immigrants. No one wanted to teach it. Too slow, too repetitive, too thankless, they said. I volunteered. I'll never forget the first student. Her name was Fatima. She wore layers of modest fabric, eyes heavy with stories I'd never hear. She stared at the mouse like it might bite her. This machine hates me, she muttered through a nervous laugh. No, I smiled. You just haven't taught it who's boss yet. We spent an hour trying to open her first email. When the page finally loaded and she saw a photo of her grandson, smiling from another continent, she started to cry. You brought my baby into my living room, she whispered. That was the moment. The shift. I wasn't just filing folders anymore. I was creating access. Creating connection. And something inside me, something that had been numb for years, sparked to life. I started designing simple lesson plans. Step-by-step guides. Used my own money to buy refurbished laptops. Word spread. Classes filled. Then someone asked me to speak to a local community center about the program. It wasn't a big speech. Maybe 10 people in a cold room with folding chairs. But it was the first time I stood up and people leaned in. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. And in that quiet, unexpected place, I began to feel like a leader for the very first time. What started with one class turned into a full-scale initiative within a year. We named it Digital Bridges, a simple concept with a powerful ripple. I led the program development, curriculum design, and volunteer training. We expanded to 4 neighborhoods. Started with 10 students per week. Within 6 months, we were teaching over 1,200 seniors and immigrants per month how to access the digital world. I created a color-coded manual system for non-native English speakers. We partnered with the city library, brought in corporate sponsors. By year 2, our email open rate for course resources was 78%, higher than most corporate newsletters. But the biggest win? We started seeing lives change. A mother learned how to schedule her first telehealth appointment. A grandfather ordered groceries online for the first time and cried at the door. A teenage volunteer hugged me and said, "This project gave my grandma back her dignity." It was all happening. But to my family, I was still drifting. At a cousin's wedding, my aunt asked what I was doing these days. I told her proudly, "I run a tech access program. We've helped over 6,000 people so far." She blinked twice. "Oh, so still doing that little teaching thing?" "That little teaching thing." I smiled politely and changed the subject. At Christmas, my dad asked if I had thought about going back to law school. "You were always so smart. I just hate seeing you waste that potential." Waste. That word sat with me for weeks. Because he wasn't being cruel. He genuinely believed I had failed to rise. That leading in a quiet room, surrounded by elderly immigrants and secondhand laptops, didn't count. No one in my family shared our press features. Not even when Digital Bridges was recognized by the mayor's office. I emailed my brother the link to the article. No response. When I called a week later, he said, "Sorry, I've been swamped. Haven't read it yet." And still, I kept going. We hosted our first regional summit. I spoke on panels. Created a mentorship program for young women interested in civic tech. The world started noticing. Just not the people who once said they believed in me most. I wasn't invisible anymore. Not to strangers. But to the ones who mattered, I still felt like a shadow standing just outside the spotlight. And I told myself it was okay. That I didn't need their approval. But deep down, I still wanted one person, just one, to look at me and say, "You're leading. And we see you." The invitation came in an email I almost deleted. Midwest Women in Civic Leadership Conference, Minneapolis, Minnesota. They were offering a discounted registration for community organizers. I wasn't invited as a speaker, just an attendee. Still, something about it tugged at me. I cleared my weekend, printed my ticket, and showed up in my secondhand blazer with a stack of flyers for Digital Bridges tucked under my arm. The room was buzzing. Women in sleek suits, press badges, state representatives in heels sharper than their smiles. I felt out of place immediately, like the kid who wandered into the grown-ups' room by mistake. But I stayed. I took notes, asked questions, networked awkwardly, slipped my flyer into tote bags when no one was looking. I reminded myself, this matters. Even if no one sees you, you're still here. Then on day 2 it happened. The closing keynote speaker had to cancel, emergency flight change, or some kind of scheduling mess. There was a flurry of whispers among the event staff. I watched one woman, clearly in charge, pacing near the podium with her phone pressed to her ear. Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. "You're Avery Morgan, right?" I turned. It was Carla, a program manager I'd met once through the city's Digital Equity Initiative. "I remember your talk from the Housing Equity Summit last spring. You were amazing. We're in a bind, and would you be willing to step in?" My mouth went dry. "For the keynote?" She nodded. 15 minutes. Just share your story. What you've built. Why it matters. I blinked. I'm not prepared. Carla smiled. "Avery, you've lived the keynote. Just tell the room what you've already done." 15 minutes later, I stood behind the podium, heart pounding like a drumline in my chest. The spotlight was warm. Too warm. My fingers trembled slightly as I adjusted the mic. I looked out at the crowd of unfamiliar faces and took a breath. Then I began. I told them about Fatima and her first email, about grocery deliveries and doctor appointments, about how leadership isn't always loud, and how the most powerful transformations happen when no one's watching. I spoke slowly, from my belly, letting every word rise from that place that used to ache with doubt. When I finished, the room was still. Then the applause broke. Not polite, not restrained, real. I stepped off the stage, a little dazed, and was immediately surrounded. And that's when I met her. She looked about my age, late 20s, curly hair, eyes red from tears. She held a conference tote in one hand, tissues in the other. "You're Avery?" she asked. "Yes," I smiled, unsure. My fiancé is Afghan, she began. His grandmother was so isolated after they brought her here. Couldn't read English, didn't trust the tech. Then she started a program, Digital Bridges, I think. My heart leapt. She Skypes us now, she said, voice trembling. Every Sunday. She even sends voice notes. Last week, she told me she's proud of the woman I've become. She never said that before. She didn't know I was the founder.
Not yet.
I reached into my bag and handed her a flyer. She stared, then looked up. No way. You made this. I nodded. She hugged me.
Just like that.
Tears between strangers. You changed her life. You changed ours. I didn't say much.
Didn't need to.
Because in that moment, something shifted. Not because I demanded attention. Not because I fought for a stage. But because the truth walked in by itself and refused to stay quiet. The video of my keynote went viral on LinkedIn. Someone from the conference had filmed it on their phone and posted a clip with the caption, "Real leadership doesn't ask for the mic. It earns it." The next morning, I woke up to hundreds of notifications. By lunchtime, my inbox was a flood. Interview requests, collaboration offers, invitations to speak. But none of that hit me the way his message did. It was from my dad. Just 3 words. I saw it. No punctuation. No emojis. No explanation. But it was the loudest he'd ever been in my direction. A few days later, a handwritten card arrived from my mom. Folded into the corner of the envelope was a clipping from our local newspaper with a sticky note attached. "You always had this in you. I just didn't know how to see it." My brother texted, too. "Okay. I finally watched your speech. That was fire, Avenue, proud of you." I didn't cry. I didn't run to tell anyone. I just sat with it. Let it sink in slowly, like sun through the blinds after a long storm. Because by the time their recognition came, I didn't need it. I had already become the person I was waiting for. Already stood in my own light. It wasn't pride. It was peace. And in that peace, I found something stronger than validation. I found a voice that didn't tremble anymore. A back that stood tall. A self that didn't disappear in silence. I didn't print the letter. Didn't frame the article. I just kept the sticky note. Because that was enough. If you've ever been told you're too quiet to lead, if you've ever watched people choose someone louder, someone flashier, while you sat with ideas burning in your chest, this story was for you. Because leadership doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks in a whisper. Sometimes it shows up quietly, stays late, and keeps showing up when no one's clapping. You don't have to wait to be chosen. You don't have to raise your voice to raise others. Your moment might not look like a spotlight. It might be a community center, a classroom, a single conversation that shifts everything. But it will come. And when it does, you won't need a script. You'll already be ready. Wherever you are watching from, tell me your story in the comments. Who told you that you couldn't? And what did you do anyway? Because someone out there needs your courage, your quiet fire, your proof that the ones they overlook are often the ones who rise. Thank you for being here. More real stories, more second chances are on their way.